Welcome to the Mitcham History Notes YouTube channel. Today's video I'm going to be looking at the architecture of Mitcham's former town hall, better known as the Vestry Hall. Now, this photograph I took in January this year when there weren't any leaves on the trees, so I could get a better picture of the whole building. This is the London Road in the front here. There's that clock tower, and this is now the main entrance to the building. And that's where originally a horse-drawn fire engine was kept. Now, what do we know about the architecture of the Vestry Hall? Very little. My main source of information for anything to do with the history of Mitcham is the Eric Montague series, Mitcham Histories. This one, number 5, Lower Green West, has a whole chapter devoted to the Vestry Hall, as one would expect. The details about the architecture, unfortunately, just a couple of very disparaging remarks. Eric Montague tells us it was designed by Robert Masters Charts, opened in the Golden Jubilee year of Queen Victoria in 1887. And this fellow, Barrett, the author of Surrey Highways and Byways, writing only 7 years later, so that's 1894, said, "Fronting me now was a terrible building." And he refers to it as such extreme architectural ugliness. Charming. That red brick blot has ruined forever the picturesqueness of Mitcham of old. Yes, you should come in now. There's quite a lot of buildings that have ruined the picturesqueness of Mitcham. Anyway, 70 years later, so 70 years plus 1894, so that's 1960s. Nairn and Pevsner gave impression to the same revulsion, but with greater restraint and economy of words. They wrote this series of the Builders of England, and there was a separate book on each county. So under Surrey, they referred to the ugly town hall, formerly Vestry Hall. Charming. Okay, so where am I getting my information about the architecture? Well, fortunately, since this was published, we have the internet. With the internet, we have a thing called the Internet Archive, also known as the Wayback Machine. There's a complete set of periodicals called The Builder, and this one from the 1887 edition, packaged as 6 months, July to December, as a PDF. A new public hall of Mitcham. It tells us where it is, overlooking Mitcham Green, the principal frontage of the building to the high road from Mitcham to Sutton. The building is in the Queen Anne style. I'll take your word for it. The materials used being red brick, yes, patent red brick window heads and bands. Window heads and bands. Here's a picture of a window, of the head, I presume. So yeah, that's that. And Shawk stone dressings, entrances and cornice. So what is Shawk? Trying to do a Google search on Shawk, and Google says, "You sure you don't mean Sean?" No, I do mean Shawk. So I did find, and this is from Oxford University. It says that it's quarried southeast of Carlisle, what's called Cumbria now, limestone, and it was used locally in the Roman imperial period, notably for construction on Hadrian's Wall. I've seen another description somewhere saying that the colouring of it is more of a pink than a red. Now, bearing in mind that this periodical says the Shawk stone dressings, entrances and cornice, however, we look at a picture of one of the entrances today, a bit more close up. It's been painted white. This wasn't what it was originally. It looks nice now, but it was originally pink. And whatever evidence do I have for that? A photograph from, I believe, Facebook. Oh, the number 44 bus. And here we can see the pinkness of that limestone around the entrance. And also the cornice, that's that bit there underneath the eaves of the roof. So let's move on. The principal frontage facing the green is 80 feet length, 80 feet in length. The height of the cornice being 40 feet. So let's go back to our photographs of the building. So what he's saying here is that the principal part of the building, and I take that to mean this bit to there, because if you ignore this bit where the fire station was, that's the principal building, isn't it? So that's 80 feet there and 40 feet to the cornice. So it's 40 feet up, 80 feet. Nice proportions, aren't they? 40, 80. Then it says, and to the ridge of the high pitch roof, 60 feet. So up to there is 60 feet. So 80 feet, 40, and another 20 to 60. At the northeast corner, a clock tower, and in which there is an illuminated clock and a peal of bells rises to a height of 80 feet. The clock tower rises to a height of 80 feet. So we have an 80 feet frontage and an 80 feet clock tower, which makes it kind of square. And in a central position above the summit roof, there is a ventilating fleche rising to the same height as the tower. That's referring to this thing here in the middle. Now, in this photograph, it doesn't show too well, so I'm going to switch to another photograph. This one, taken from the cricket green, looking at the Vestry Hall. Different time of year, but a nice sunny day as well. So we're saying 80 feet across here as being the front, the principal building, 80 feet high tower, and this also reaches to a height of 80 feet. But did it mean the top of this structure or the weather vane at the top? Because here in this photograph we have something missing, and what's missing is that originally there was a bell. This bell wasn't a part of the clock. This was a call bell to volunteer firemen. And so in this photograph, the top of that bell can be seen to be the top of the weather vane. So that's 80 feet, 80 feet, 80 feet. Marvellous. And what about this structure here, this ventilating fleche that's been referred to? My periodical says there's a ventilating fleche rising. So further down, when it refers to the usage of the floors, it says the upper floor contains a public hall, as it does now. The upper floor contains a public hall, which 58 feet in length, 31 feet in width, and is 32 feet in height to the apex of an open timber roof. So remember what we said, that this was 80 feet across, 40 feet to the cornice, but in the hall it's 32 feet up to an apex of an open timber roof, which there are 3 central outlets connecting with the ventilating fleche. Now, as it happens, this photograph is from the Vestry Hall Facebook page, and it shows the ceiling above where these things are holding it up, or it looks like it's holding it up. But this in fact was a false ceiling, because originally, as it said here in this document, this went all the way up to 32 feet to the apex of an open timber roof. And here's a photograph that I took a few weeks ago when I did a visit around the Vestry Hall, because they have finished a fairly long project of refurbishing the whole building, and they've taken away this ceiling to reveal this open timber roof. And it's referring to here in the periodical that it is open timber roof in which there are 3 central outlets connected with the ventilating fleche. And this photograph only shows one, so I took another photograph, naturally. looking up from the centre of the hall to the roof. So those are the three ventilating inlets which lead up to the ventilating fleche. So it's reasonable to assume then that the central one is directly underneath this fleche. Now why is it called a fleche? It's French, or possibly Old French, for an arrow. And the idea basically is that it seems to be an arrow pointing to the sky. Now its use was as a part of the ventilation system. It's mentioned in the periodical that the upper floor will seat an audience of about 400 persons. South end of the stage, a movable platform, and there are retiring and cloakrooms. So the basic idea then is that if we look at the pitch of the roof from the side, that acts as a kind of a funnel for hot air from the people in this floor rising, and as it reaches near the apex, the volume decreases, which increases the pressure. And so the pressure means that air that's circulating up here, just the outside air, is now a lower pressure than the pressure of the air immediately underneath it. And so effectively it's drawn out. The hot air is drawn out through the slats. And it acts like a chimney. Not a chimney for a fire, but a chimney for hot air from all the people assembled here. And now, fortunately, after this refurbishment, this marvellous 1887 ventilation system can be revealed. The Builder magazine also tells us that there is in the walls are also inserted Benham's ventilating inlets. They are still there, but they've been painted over. If you look at the wall, there they are. You can just about make out Benham and Son, London. So there would have been ventilating inlets there. And you might ask why they've been covered up. Possibly because of the extension to the Vestry Hall that was built in 1929 onwards, made it such that the ventilating outlets were probably not going to the outside air. Oh, and the fireman's call bell, which is here in this photograph. I'm not sure the year of this one, but it's going to be before the Second World War, I would imagine. There's a close-up of it. So the bell was rung initially that the fire service that was based at the Vestry Hall was a volunteer service. So the basic idea was someone would run to the Vestry Hall and they would ring the bell and fire. The volunteer fireman would come running. That method evolved over a period of time, and I think it's worth doing another video on it. I think it's fascinating. So that's basically what we now know from this architectural entry in the Builder magazine of 1887, which doesn't show an author, but it's quite likely to be Mr. Shawk. And these facts, I dare say, were not known to Eric Montague when he wrote his book. And you might be interested to know is that the Mitcham Cricket Green Community and Heritage, of which I'm a member, are going to be pursuing with Historic England getting the Vestry Hall to be Grade 2 listed. And this information that will come across in the Builder magazine will be very useful. Now in the second part of my video, I'll now talk about guesswork. Up to now, this is all facts. I'm just showing you where the facts relate to the building. Let's have a look at one of these entrances. One thing to say is that this thing here, this string course between the ground floor and the upper floor, it's got a wavy line. Brickwork is going to show the wavy line. Now it's possible that this relates to the River Wandle or depicts the River Wandle. And I'm saying that because at this time in 1887, Mitcham as a civil parish was bounded by the River Wandle and the River Graveney on 3 of its 4 sides, and on the eastern side by a boundary river Croydon. But this is just a guess. Also a guess is this whole design around the entrance. Now, I'm not an architect, but I can read books, and I have looked into this, and it is stated that this approach of using a pediment, this triangle on top of a doorway, signifies that this, in fact, this whole view is like a miniature house, and it's intended to show that people are welcome at this house. This is classical architecture, and from what I understand, classical architecture means ancient Greece and then taken up by the Roman Empire. So we're talking about an idea going back 2,000 years, that each entrance at the Vestry Hall referred to a separate house or a separate place to go into. And the builder, periodical, does tell us that the ground floor was used for the offices of the vestry, which was the early form of parish, that was the parish council for Mitcham, but it was also used for the offices of the Croydon Rural District Authority. Now, bearing in mind that we know that this part of the building was used for, the ground floor anyway, was used as the horse-drawn fire engine, it's likely that the fire service also had an entrance for themselves. There was another entrance around the side of the clock tower, and I think that each one of these entrances were there specifically for the separate functions that the offices on the ground floor did. So possibly the Vestry Hall, possibly the Croydon Rural Sanitary Authority, possibly the Firemen's office. This is just guesswork. I'd have to look at the parish records, which are in the Surrey History Centre in Woking. So I might get around to doing that one day, but I don't like Woking. But anyway, so there we have it. Thank you for watching. Hope you found this interesting. Press that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. Bye for now.